Alright, what's going on? Today I wanted to do something a little different for a YouTube video, and that's just showcase some of the recent training clips that I've got and just some of the things that have been on my mind. And I've collected these videos over the course of the last month, and I'm just going to go off the cuff and kind of just share some things that are going on in my brain and some of the things I've been tinkering with in the weight room and especially in my track work with my sprinting. So just something here, creative little warm-up drill that I've been doing lately with just a tennis ball, warming up with some wall ball. Good way to get some movement variability in. And then I've been sprinkling in a lot of these movement days lately, which are usually coming on my Thursdays. I'll do acceleration Monday, force dominant lower body on Tuesday, force dominant upper body on Wednesday, and then I usually do some kind of long, slow duration, steady state conditioning with this movement circuit, which has really been a game changer because I've neglected this stuff for a long time, just kind of persuading myself that it's not really that necessary. But the more I kind of do it, the more I realize how important it is. And it's incredible how locked in and restricted we get when we just stick to the same thing over and over again. So really important to embed this stuff in and give yourself true low days. Or just incorporate this stuff into your rest time during your lifts. I mean, I think people stand around a lot during their lifts and they're not getting enough of that stuff in. So I think that stuff has a lot of value. And in my sprint work, as you can see here, using the sled, I used to use chains on turf, but now that I'm on a track, I'm really liking the sled. So this is acceleration work. I did some contrast 20s. And I went with a 30% VDEC on this day. So what VDEC really allows you to do is target specific qualities in specific phases of a sprint. So if you use a larger VDEC, that means that you're going to use a higher weight, which is going to slow you down to a greater velocity decrement. That's what VDEC kind of stands for. So with the load that I'm using, it's more targeting the transition phase and expression of power. So the heavier weight you would use is going to translate more to your first step, okay? And the lighter weight you use is going to be more favoring max velocity. So you see on this day, this is my max V day. Starting with a lot of plyos, you saw those single leg hops and now these hurdle jumps right there. And this sled only has a 10-pound plate on it. So this is only slowing me down 10% of my best flying 10 with a 20-yard build. So the reason we load those flying 10s is to give yourself some feedback in that max velocity mechanic. Okay, so as I'm running at top speed mechanics, I'm loading that pattern to feel, mainly for me, is the thing I'm working on is trying to push through my glute and finish these pushes. Because I think my foot comes off the ground too fast in an effort to get my leg cycling through fast enough, and I never really finish that push. So loading that gives you that good feedback of driving off the ground, and then we're contrasting that again, just like with the acceleration work with the unloaded flying 10s. So that's my focus right now with the speed work, is trying to refine some mechanics at top speed to hopefully provide some carryover when I actually start to lay on the gas. Right now I'm not really surpassing 30 yards distance in my sprints, just trying to focus on mechanics to lay the groundwork. And with my lifts, the focus has been eccentric strength, and I've been reading Tim Caron's book, Strength Deficit, which has really inspired a lot of what I'm doing in the weight room now. I think Anthony Cockrell's another really good follow. Hunter Eisenhower with Arizona State basketball. These are all really good guys that have kind of inspired the things that I'm using in this block. So this was a couple weeks ago when I was in California, just doing a kind of a week 0 or an intro phase to eccentrics. These were sub-maximal eccentrics. So using on the bench press 85% of my 1 rep max for 5 sets of 3, and then that right there I called the 2+1 cable row, where you're kind of pulling down 2 arms, releasing up with 1 to get the eccentric overload on 1 arm, and then just some hypertrophy work for the back. Again, focusing on a slow control down, but higher reps still here. I did sets of 8 to 10 on this day. One of the things that I just love about traveling is that you get a lot of different versatility with some of the equipment in these weight rooms. I really like that setup with that almost cambered bar setup, or that deficit bar that allowed me to get some more range of motion. But as you fatigue, you kind of lose that range of motion on those rows. And with my lower body stuff, it's been kind of the same focus with the eccentrics. So I'm usually starting these sessions with an isometric hold and then bridging that into an oscillatory ISO to really drive coordination around those joints and also comfort in those bottom ranges of motion. So early on in a training phase, for me, my focus is strengthening deep ranges of motion. I'm trying to increase the tendon stiffness at the bottom of that range of motion and also just increase the intermuscular coordination around those joints. And then I bridge it into high force in the form of a drop catch lunge right here. So I'm taking the dumbbells, shooting them down to really isolate braking forces. And then I'm coupling that with loaded jumps. This was yesterday's workout, which now we're into maximal eccentrics. So now I'm above 90%, and I did 4 sets of 2. One of those sets was a warm-up set. That's this weight right here, 365. Then this is the first working set. My new intern, Ben, there, doing a good job giving me a strict 4-second count. So we did 2 reps at 375 here. Then I did the next set at 385, and then the last set I did 395 but only got a single, and I of course didn't film that one. I thought the camera was running and it wasn't, but I did that first rep and then was like, yeah, I'm not going to get that second one. So that happens. A little bit of an overshoot, but stimulus was still achieved, and I had the camera on, the VBT camera there, just to continue driving effort. And I think that's one thing that people don't utilize VBT for, is measuring performance drop-offs and how far you are from failure. So if you have that camera on, even if you're not working for speed or power or whatever you want to call it, it's much easier to gauge how close you are to muscular or technical failure if you have that velocity feedback. So really important there with the eccentric work to know how much I'm going to load onto the next sets. That's been really good for advising those decisions. And then some hip flexor sit-ups here on the glute ham device, the GHD. One thing that I've found with sprinting is that your hip flexors do take a really big beating. So been focusing on creating some eccentric strength there at longer lengths. And then this Nordic variation, I did a Nordic post last week on Instagram, and something that is apparent in reading research and articles is that not much torque is created by the athletes in that end range. So that last 45 degrees of knee flexion right here, where I'm really trying to isolate, is kind of ignored, and people do these Nordic flops, we call them, and kind of ignore that important range of motion. So using the hands here just as much as needed to help me isolate that part of the range of motion. So that's pretty much it for this video. I'm going to end it right there. Thank you for joining. Please like, comment any questions you have, and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you watching. See you next time.